The Exorcist? Released in 1973 and directed by William Friedkin, this horror film tells the story of a young girl possessed by a demonic entity and the exorcism performed by two priests to save her. The movie's intensity and realistic portrayal of exorcism make it a classic and one of the scariest movies of all time. 2. The Shining. Released in 1980 and directed by Stanley Kubrick, this horror film tells the story of a struggling writer who takes a job as a caretaker at an isolated hotel, where he slowly descends into madness. The movie's use of psychological horror and its iconic imagery, such as the creepy Grady twins and elevators full of blood, make this movie one of the top 10 scariest. 3. Psycho, 1960, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. This horror film tells the story of a secretary who embezzles money from her employer and goes on the run, only to end up at a remote motel run by a disturbed young man. The movie's iconic shower scene makes it unforgettable to lovers of horror and suspense. 4. Alien, 1979, directed by Ridley Scott. This horror film tells the story of a crew of a commercial spaceship who encounter a deadly extraterrestrial creature. Aside from being one of the first female hero films, the movie's intense suspense, terrifying creature design, and iconic chest-buster scene make it part of horror film history. 5. Jaws. Released in 1975 and directed by Steven Spielberg, this horror film tells the story of a man-eating great white shark terrorizing a New England beach town. The movie's suspense, thrilling action and John Williams' score make it one of Spielberg's most popular movies. One of Steven's first movies, he almost walked away from the project due to constant production issues. 6. The Silence of the Lambs. Directed by Jonathan Demme, this 1991 horror film tells the story of a young FBI agent who enlists the help of a cannibalistic serial killer to catch another serial killer. The movie's iconic performances from Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins make it one of the most suspenseful and thrilling movies of all time. 7. In 1974, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was released. Directed by Tobe Hooper, this horror film tells the story of a group of friends who stumble upon a family of cannibals in rural Texas and the infamous horror character Leatherface. 8. Rosemary's Baby, 1968, directed by Roman Polanski. This horror film tells the story of a young couple who move into a new apartment, where the wife becomes pregnant and begins to suspect that her neighbors are part of a satanic cult. 9. The Omen, 1976, directed by Richard Donner. This horror film tells the story of a couple whose adopted son turns out to be the Antichrist. 10. Halloween, 1978, directed by John Carpenter. This horror film tells the story of a young boy, Michael Myers, who murders his sister on Halloween and returns to his hometown years later to continue his killing spree. This movie helped launch Jamie Lee Curtis into stardom,